Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 92, noes 19.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we could now go to calendar number 291 on page 19 by Ms. Nolan.
Clerk will read.
Assembly 7508A, Calendar 291, Ms. Nolan, an act to amend Chapter 91 of the laws of 2002.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Mr. Barron to explain his vote. Get your mic, please.
I think you should withdraw. I wanted to speak before, not to explain my vote.
Mr. Speaker, we withdraw the roll call. Mr. Barron wishes to be heard on the bill.
The roll call is withdrawn. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Barron on the bill.
On the bill.
Mr. Barron on the bill.
You know, today, I can't believe what's about to happen today. We're going to once again vote to give a mayor total control over a school system of 1.1 million children, 85% of them black and Latino, a $24 billion school budget. We are going to say to this state, to the parents of our state who have zero power, it's not like in other areas where everybody has school boards, where there may be some school board elections. Our parents have zero power in deciding policy over their children in New York City. Every other county has school boards, and not all of the school boards are good. And if you think it's because of corruption that they eliminated our school boards, well, I got news for you. There's corruption in the mayoralty, there's corruption in the governor's house, there's corruption all over the place. So if we're going to rid structures because of corruption, we have to start at the very top. We couldn't even have a legislative body. So to justify ending school boards because some school boards were corrupt is not right. In 1968, Ocean Hill-Brownsville, we fought against a centralized school board, a centralized board over all of the schools in New York City. We said we wanted community control over our schools. They decentralized it into school boards instead of giving us local community control over our schools in New York City. In other areas of the country, they have local school councils. Every school is controlled by a local school council. That means that that panel of 11 people, 49% of them parents, have the right to select the policies, have the right to determine how the budget is spent, and have a right to choose the principal and who's teaching their children. So here we come again to vote for mayoral control. And you know what I hear? Bloomberg had it, so why not de Blasio? The Republican mayor had it, so why not the Democratic mayor? Neither one of them are educators. No one should ever have that kind of power. Right now, de Blasio of the Policy Board, the Panel for Education Policy, 13-member board, de Blasio picks 8 of them. The borough presidents pick 5, 1 each, 13 on the panel. De Blasio picks the CEO of the schools, called the chancellor. This is a business model. This ain't an education model for structure. It's based on a business model. The mayor says, I want it because I want to be held accountable. Mayor, you are accountable whether you control it or not. You're the mayor. You don't have to have control over the schools to be held accountable. You already are accountable. I'll tell you what he wants control over. New York State has a $25 billion budget. New York City alone has a $24 billion budget. And in that budget is $4.5 billion in contracts. Contracts, money. People are making millions of dollars off of a failing school system. When Mayor Bloomberg was in and he had his 8 panels, a few of his appointed panelists didn't vote his way. The next meeting, he kicked them off so that he can get the vote he wanted. So we're going to sit here and give one single man who's not an educator, clueless about education. You know what he said? He said, well, Charles, at least I selected an educator, Carmen Farina. Yes, Carmen Farina was also under Bloomberg, implementing the same policies. You know what's happening in New York City schools now? This is what Bloomberg did, and this is the same thing de Blasio is doing. He says, we made improvement. We made improvement. The graduation rate has increased. 70% of our children are graduating now. That's progress. Well, you know what? The diplomas that they're receiving is not worth the paper and ink that they have. 78% of them, when they have to go to CUNY to continue their education, need remediation because they weren't properly educated. They'll tell you the graduation rate, but what about the college prep rate? How many of these children were prepared for college or a career after they go through the Blasio and Bloomberg system? If they're black and Latino, 30% at best, 70% not prepared. If they're all the children, it's about 42%. The majority of the children are not prepared. Why would we do this? All of you who have school boards, you know you wouldn't want no one person controlling your area and your schools. You're having elections. You're having some democracy. Whether they're good or bad, you're battling over them, and parents have a chance to win. But in New York City, the #1 city in the world, we brag about democracy. We will not have an opportunity for our parents to have any control over the policies or the budget that determines what happens to their children. I know you're going to vote for it because you're going to say, well, we don't want to go back to the old school boards. That's what you're going to say. And you don't know what you're talking about. Because, yes, there was corruption in some of those school boards. But you know why the education system failed back then? Because the class sizes were too large. You can't teach children in overcrowded classrooms. They failed because they didn't have proper training and accountability for teachers. They failed because they didn't have principals who had visions. People got political patronage jobs, and it had nothing to do with the school board sometimes. On a higher level, it has a lot to do with others who have power. They failed because they didn't have a culturally relevant curriculum. They failed because, well, they had billions of dollars, but they didn't have enough science labs in schools, computer labs in schools. There were a lot of reasons why the school failed. Why would this body give Bloomberg complete control over our school system in 2002? And this was a businessman that hired Kathy Black. Kathy Black, the most incredibly incompetent person I've ever seen, heard of, to be put in a powerful position like, she came from Hertz magazines, knew nothing about education. Kathy Black. And some people even supported that. I couldn't believe it, that they would have someone so incompetent, but that's what mayoral control will get you. It'll give one person an opportunity. Don't let people sit here and tell you the reason why all of the failure was because of school boards. I know some of you have some school boards here that you wish would radically change, but you work with it in a democratic way. We have to come off that. I put a bill in. The only thing I said last year, if you're going to extend mayoral control, at least set up a commission with experts on education to be out the year that you're going to extend it. That would have been last year. And let them decide a new school structure. You know what they say, well, Charles, what would you want? What would you want? First of all, anything but de Blasio. But secondly, there are other kinds of structures. We can go to local school councils in every school that's in the city, along with the centralized body. We can possibly go to borough boards. Each borough will have a different board, a different structure, and then they'd send a representative to a centralized structure. But I'm not an expert in education. Let the experts go out for a year. At least set up a commission. Don't sit here and keep arguing, well, we got to do mayoral control because we need it for a bargaining chip when we go to the table with the Senate. You know, later for our children, you know how they say the banks are too big to fail? Well, our children are too big to fail. They're too valuable to fail. And we shouldn't be sitting up here playing politics and negotiation with the life of our children. If a black child doesn't get an education, their pipeline is going to be to prison. So while you're sitting up here worrying about a Democratic mayor not being able to get what a Republican mayor got, who cares? You got to think about the people over the party, our children over politics. It is irresponsible for us to come another year, give this man control. He doesn't know what he's doing. We still have high-stakes, standardized testing. You know what happens in New York City? Every other period. Test prep, test prep, test prep. So our children are being experts on taking tests, not being educated. Test prep, that's what happens every other period. We don't have no music and culture. Some of the things that used to be in school, learn some trades, electric shop, wood shop, none of that's there. Test prep, the whole school, the whole family is stressed out because they got to pass some test. And do you know those test-taking companies that make these tests? They get multi-billion-dollar contracts. I remember the former chancellor, Dennis Walcott. I always complain about contracts. The whole New York City budget, $80 billion, and it's about 10, 15 billion in contracts. I used to say to Dennis, why would you fire, this is what Bloomberg and Dennis did, school crossing guards and lunchroom attendants because they had a budget concern for $12 million. I said, turn to page whatever and look at the contracting budget. He said, Charles, you know, we need contracts, yes, for transportation, for food, but you need $80 million for general services? What the heck is that? You need $50 million for computer training? I know some people in-house that can train you for computers for nothing. When I went through that list of all the contracts given to these neophytes coming out of college, they're getting contracts for each school to help the school that Bloomberg and de Blasio are failing. So I know you're not accustomed to voting down anything once it gets up there. I know you got the votes. But if you can today, I'm going to try it anyway. Think twice. Don't do it. And don't get up and say, my heart is heavy, but I got to do what I got to do with a heavy heart. I think you should lighten up your heart today. So I don't want nobody to get ill. It'll be healthy to vote against this. But on the real side, vote against it and make them do the right thing. If they don't come back with a one-year extension and with a commission attached to it, let's not do this, because we're going to give it 3 more years. De Blasio, 3 more years? Our children can't take 3 more years of a failure. He is failing us. He's failing us. When he came to us, you see that light presentation? When I asked him, what about the 78%? Yeah, we're working on that. You know, what about the college prep? We're working on that. You know, what about, you know, there's a lot of teachers that are in the rubber room. And a lot of those teachers in the rubber room punished because they spoke out. And you know, there's been a decline in the hiring of black teachers. Black teachers are on the decline. But nobody talks about that stuff, just giving him mayoral control. So I hope you don't do it today. I hope we at least, if we vote no today, let's go back to the drawing board. Don't let them push this on us because we're in the middle of negotiations. Vote no. Vote no, and let's have a more serious discussion about this and come up with something that is other than just here, take the lives of our children. He's not an educator. And we're going to continue. We're going to continue down this road. And for those of you who have school boards, you know how important in this so-called democracy is for people to have an opportunity to vote. Vote no on this. Our children are too big, too valuable for us to fail them.
Ms. Maliatakis on the bill.
I never thought I'd get up and say I agree 100% with what Charles Barron has said. But you know, in all honesty, when we look at the reauthorization of mayoral control, we're looking at an opportunity to improve what hasn't worked to the best of its ability. In 2002, when this was first passed, there was the sunset of 2009. In 2009, there was changes that were made to improve it, and it's still a work in progress. And I think what we're doing here by just extending it another 3 years without making any changes is not doing what's in the best interest of the students of the city of New York. Right now, there are 13 members, 8 of which are appointed by the mayor. Only 1 is required to be a parent. None of them are required to be an educator. I find that to be troublesome that we have a panel of education policy that doesn't require that the members be either parents or educators. And I think that's something that we need to look toward to change. Or else what we're going to see is the mayor's cronies appointed to this committee and have full control. They'll have the majority of the votes. And we see how that works with the MTA, we see how it works with the Port Authority, we see how it works with the Water Board. It's never in the interest of the residents that we represent, but instead of what the mayor wants us to want, or the governor, depending on which board we're talking about, what they want done is usually rubber stamped. Additionally, I think it's important that we require in this legislation that the chancellor is an educator. I think that's something that's very important. And as my colleague mentioned, with the selection of Kathy Black, it probably was not the best choice. We know it wasn't the best choice. And so we should require going forward that the chancellor of the City of New York school system that oversees the education of 1.1 million children, $24 billion budget, has an education background. I think that's only common sense. Now, with regards to transparency, many of us have community education councils, PTAs, that have given recommendations on how we can improve this legislation going forward, how we can make mayoral control be more transparent, how we can make the process of the contracts, as was mentioned earlier, $4.5 billion in contracts, and we don't know where that really money is going. And not only that, but the PTAs and the community education councils don't even have the ability to review the budgets of their individual schools. And so I think we need to be a little more transparent with those and have our PTAs and CECs part of the decision process. They only get to review a portion right now of the budgets of their schools, and they should be able to see the whole picture. And that's how they can make more recommendations on how we can improve education going forward. So I support the concept of mayoral control. I don't think it's a bad concept. I just think that we need to take this opportunity to make it better. And certainly we've heard it all in our communities, from our parents, from our teachers. And I think just making certain improvements, we shouldn't be in a rush to do this. Let's listen more to the community. Let's talk more to educators. Let's see what improvements can be made. So we are making sure that we are giving the best quality education to our children as possible. So I will be voting in the negative today. I hope that we'll be back at the drawing board and discussing this further before the session ends. Thank you.
Mr. Castorina on the bill.
Well, this is the first time that I rise before this body to address it, and I thank you, Speaker, for the opportunity to address this body. I'm going to vote in the negative on this bill, and I do support mayoral control. I think from an organizational standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. But the system as it stands right now is undemocratic, it's corrupt, and it allows for a single executive to control entirely the system of education for our children. And as we know, and we've learned this through history, absolute power corrupts absolutely. The mayor should not be allowed to stock the board with friends and donors without a term who serve at the pleasure of the mayor. It's a rubber stamp, and we can't have it. There need to be terms, there needs to be accountability, and this bill is merely an extender. All of these years that have gone by, we haven't done anything. There have been no tweaks. There have been no changes. Why? So I'm voting no for this, as much as I do appreciate mayoral control, as much as I do appreciate the fact that that type of organizational model does work. I'm going to vote no because there has been no changes, there has been no tweaks, and because our children deserve better. So don't hold your nose and vote yes today. Vote no because no is the right vote. And I thank you, Speaker, for my time.
Thank you, Mr. Castorina. Maiden voyage, sir. Mr. Montesano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just, before I begin, our colleague from Brooklyn before hit everything on the head. He covered all the areas of what's wrong with the education system in the city, notwithstanding the issues we have throughout the state with our education system. Today, in many of the counties in this state, especially my county, Nassau, and then Suffolk and the other adjoining counties, the voters are going to the polls as we speak to choose the members of their school board and to vote on their school's budget as presented to them by the school board. That's the democratic way to run the schools. All these years in New York City, we have seen a substantial decline. Not a day goes by that I don't open the New York Daily News every morning or the New York Post and read of the horrendous stories that are going on in the New York City school system, between the violence, between the weapons that are confiscated, between some of the inept teachers that are there that nothing could be done with and they're restored to arbitration, to administrators that are corrupt, that don't show up, the grade fixing so the people could graduate with a diploma, and all this under the supervision of a chancellor and a mayor who do nothing to fix the situation. Parents and educators are not included in the decision-making process. There is unequal distribution of the assets to the different schools, uneven budgeting to the different schools. Your school buildings, for those members here in the city, are crumbling. They're unsafe, heating problems, all kinds of problems that go on. Lead in the water, everything that goes on. And we just sit here and we're going to let this continue for another 3 years. 1 year would have been enough until something went into place to examine it. We're going to do it for 3 years. So as this continually goes on, and with the testing issues and everything else that happens, the students are not prepared for college, as was pointed out before. they go and they wind up spending another year to a year and a half of their college education just taking remedial costs and paying for it out of their pocket before they can even start the regular college curriculum for their degree. So it costs them much more money out of their pocket due to no fault of their own. So in line with the rest of the speakers here this evening, I'll be voting in the negative, and I would ask all of you in this House to really give this some significant thought, because, again, for the members out of the city of New York, these are, this is yours. And the mayor, came up here, whatever presentation he gave you, I don't think he's warranted the trust of this legislature to be able to continue control of the schools in the city. So I'll be voting in the negative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Richardson.
Good afternoon. I rise to explain why I will not be supporting mayoral control of the schools. I've said it last year, and I'll repeat it again this year, that mayoral control of the schools is only as good as the mayor is. Now, Mayor Bill de Blasio, I love you like cooked food. I've known you for a very long time, and I like him as a personable person. I like him personally. But how I feel about you personally cannot affect my vote for my students of School District 17. I'm a hardworking assemblywoman, so I hit the ground. And when I say I hit the ground, I visited almost every school in my district. I've spoken to the principals, the superintendent. Shout out to Superintendent Ellis and Nicole Job at CEC 17. They're doing a phenomenal job. And there's a significant lack of resources in School District 17. We are lacking technology severely. We are lacking basic things like dry erase boards. I started my own little education council, and I have administrators in tears over having to do more with less. And so while our current mayor, de Blasio, is better than the former mayor, Bloomberg, because we saw what happened under one of those kind of mindsets of a mayoral control where you just lose your mind. Whereas I think that Mayor de Blasio is way better, and he is trying, and we see promising programs like UPK and other initiatives. Let us not forget that mayoral control of schools in New York City was an intervention because there was so much going on with the school boards. So all the drama was going on with the school boards. We moved to mayoral control of the schools to take control of the situation. But we never said that that was the best thing for the school districts across the city. We never looked to explore what would essentially be the best thing. We went from intervention from school board to mayoral control without looking to discover best practices across the state or best practices across the nation. And we saw what this could do under a Bloomberg administration. Mayor de Blasio will not be the mayor for the rest of our lives. There will be people who will come behind him. How do we know we will not get back to another Bloomberg? So, for me, I am voting no on this piece of legislation because I echo the sentiments of Assemblymember Barron. We do need to send out an exploration committee to come together to see if we are doing all that we can do to, truly educate our children in the fashion that we should. We owe it to them. And I'm going to leave with this. This fight here about bargaining chips is real, and I'm not getting in between any of that. I don't care who feel who about what and all of that kind of stuff. When it comes to the children of the 43rd Assembly District, they are number one. They are priority, so all egos have to go to the side when we're talking about nurturing minds. Had it not been for my education, I wouldn't be standing here right now. And whether we like to admit it or not, there is a segregation in education by your zip code. Depending on where you live is how those resources flow. And until those type of things change, then I can never vote for mayoral control of the schools. And with that, I vote in the negative.
Ms. Walker.